Okay. All right, cool. Woo! All right, I'm so happy to get you guys together. So, real quick, I started this podcast, Ctrl-Alt-Reset, as I've told you guys, just as kind of my next step in my own personal, evolution, my own personal journey into really trying to figure out, what is it that we're here for? What is reality? The nature of consciousness kept coming up with a lot of the books that I was reading. I brought, this book, My Big Toe, which is pretty instrumental in just, it's a fucking, 800-page behemoth.
It's a beast.
But like earlier on in like one of the first couple chapters, it's like, if you institute meditation, and I had been doing meditation for, I don't know, a year or something like that, but off and on, like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, like nothing really consistent. And so reading this book, it was like, just institute, 20 minutes a day, 2 times a day. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I started doing that, and I started just being able to understand a little bit more of, I am not my thoughts, and there's a greater self that I am, a greater I am. And so I started really delving into, what is consciousness? And I always love conversations when, me and you, Steve, when we talk, it's always like enlivening, like I feel like super amped up. And so I wanted to start this podcast because that's kind of what amps me up. And it really pumps me full of, cosmic juices. And that sounds super gay. Anyway.
Cosmic juices. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
What
So
a way to start it off.
Yeah, I know. So that's the type of show this is going to be, is
Right.
basically me stumbling through with my friends what is consciousness? What is reality? Like, I'm trying to be a better human being. I'm trying to be a better husband, a better, dad, a better friend. And what is it that gets in my way every day? Like I'll give some examples later on, but this first episode, it is about the power of connection. And I feel that at the heart of what consciousness is, it's love. Like, the highest state of consciousness is just pure love. And so as I try to evolve myself to be, I think my mission here on earth is to evolve my consciousness to the highest state that it can be. And so that's why I wanted to create this podcast. I had a couple dreams also of having a podcast, and it just being kind of the thing that some people were able to listen to and be like, maybe there is something more to this reality. Like, I feel like I'm a robot going through my daily routine. I don't think that that's all that there is. So this podcast really was just created to help people to start thinking differently, and hearing my experience as I bumble through, life, might give you something to laugh about, might give you something to think about, and we're going to give you some homework assignments at the end. So listen close. Anyway. So I'm joined here with my buddy Steve.
What's up? What's up?
And Jaime.
Hi.
And so Steve is just all around great guy. He was the first person that when I first moved to Arizona and I started going out like to clubs and stuff, I was like, "Yo, you've got the sidekick," because I was working at T-Mobile, and and so we just hit it off. And
I used to love that phone.
We've been friends ever since. And Jaime, I met you, I don't know, maybe it's like 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's been off and on that we've hung out, but you've always been like super cool. And it was really when I started getting into this and reading that book. And, I've been also reading like Eckhart Tolle, a bunch of his books. So I've been getting more and more into it. And so I contacted Steve. I'm like, yo, let's go out to lunch. I recently got laid off, so I've got some time. And that's also another reason why I'm starting this podcast.
Nice.
But we had such an awesome conversation at lunch.
We did.
And it was like 2 hours long. And like, the waiters were like, are you gonna buy something? Or get the hell out. And so Steve, you recommended that we should get a conversation going with Jaime.
Definitely.
Because you've had these conversations with Jaime.
Jaime and you, yep.
And so we all met at your house, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. Just to kind of go over what we wanted to talk about. And Jaime brings up this near-death experience that I am so excited to have you kind of talk about, because I left Steve's house being like, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
I was like, that is so crazy. But at the same time, it makes so much sense from what I'm reading. And so, there are people that are writing these things, like Thomas Campbell. He worked with Bob Monroe, who made the whole Monroe Institute. They have like this whole gateway experience that helps people kind of tune in their brain frequencies to help them kind of have out-of-body experiences. It's pretty crazy. But so, if you aren't able to do that, like I've never talked to anybody that has had a personal experience of actually being outside their body. Anyway, so I'm excited to hear that. So why don't you talk about kind of why you're here, Steve, and yeah, love to hear from you.
So I'm here. Well, it started when I was younger. You get kind of indoctrinated into religion.
Yeah.
And so I was born, Christian, born into the religion. And I remember my mom saying something like, Stephen, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, you're going to burn in hell. And I'm like, what? What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And that didn't resonate with me. It didn't make sense. And so I kind of was like, whoa, I don't know about this religion thing. So I would still go to church. I would still go to Sunday school and all that stuff. But I was kind of more agnostic most of my life. And then about, I don't know, when I turned 30-ish, I was more atheist, because I was more into the, what's really real and trying to figure everything out on a scientific level. And it's got to be mathematically perfect, correct.
Yeah.
And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I was watching this podcast, Tom Bilyeu, and it had my buddy that he was talking about consciousness, and he's a scientist, and it was just really cool. I just really resonated with him. And so then I was kind of I switched from atheistic mindset to more of an agnostic, open-minded mindset. And then the word spirituality, it always kind of bothered me, because it has that, religious connotation to it.
Yeah.
So, but now it's kind of it's this open-minded word. And, but consciousness, even scientists have tried to figure out consciousness. They still can't figure out everything about it. So that's kind of my journey. About 4 years ago, Donald Hoffman, that's the guy. He changed my life, and now I'm really open-minded. And then I started talking to him more about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it blew my mind. I was like, and so that's kind of the short story of how I got to this podcast, basically.
Nice.
And then I was always into sci-fi, Star Wars, Star Trek, that kind of shit. And so this just fascinates me anyway. And ever since I was 18, I always wanted to know, why are we here? Who created us? Who created the creator? All that kind of huge existential questions.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my background on this whole consciousness level stuff.
Nice.
And his story blew me away with the orbs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, I could feel it coming through there.
You're giving it away.
Ah,
Oh, shit.
teaser. But that's about it.
All right, cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm glad you're here. Jaime, why don't you, I guess I didn't even talk about why I am here, or what I believe. So why don't we just hear from you, and then I'll kind of circle back and
Okay, sure.
I'll fill in that.
So my name's Jaime. I've known Steve for about 10 years, and through Steve, I met you as well.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago.
10 years too long. Just kidding.
And I've always been kind of open. My mom really encouraged open-mindedness since I was really young. She would always present these kind of like radical concepts that were kind of out there, especially for a mom telling her kids. She would talk about like different dimensions and portals and Native Americans being very in tune with nature and reality that we're probably not aware of yet.
So those of us who don't know, you're part Native American?
What's that?
Are you part Native American?
No, she was just really into like that culture and
Oh,
those
okay.
stories.
Okay. All right.
But I guess technically yes, but from South America.
Okay.
Not
we're all mixed.
Native South
something.
American.
Yeah.
And so I remember even when I was young, like, I kind of started noticing things that other people didn't notice. I would start getting ideas, and I would call them psychic impressions because I didn't know what else to call them. Like, an example would be like, I was walking home from school, and I remember it was like 5th grade or something, right? So like 10, 11 years old or something. And walking home from school, and I would have this idea pop in my head right before I walk in the door. It would be like, oh, we're going to go have dinner at some Chinese restaurant, right? So when my mom wasn't cooking dinner, it didn't surprise me. And then she'd be like, get ready, we're going to go get some Chinese. Like, oh, there's that confirmation. And so I would have like a bunch of these little things happen over the course of years. And I mean, I think they're called synchronicities.
Yeah.
But I would just have them so unbelievably often that sometimes I would just have to like turn it off, be like, all right, this is too much. This is just too many.
Sure.
Sometimes it'd be like 10 in a day, sometimes it'd be 1 in a day. But it just got to the point where like it just became my normal. If I saw a synchronicity of some kind, like if I thought about somebody and I hear from them on the phone or something, or they come to my house, it would just only validate that reality. And so for me, consciousness has always been something that I've always been kind of in tune with, but I never had a complete understanding, what that might entail.
Yeah.
So.
Are you religious?
What's that?
Are you religious?
Oh, yeah. So I did grow up LDS.
Okay.
So from when I was about 8 years old until about 15, 16, I was exclusively LDS.
Okay.
And unfortunately, and this is not me ragging on the church or anything, but unfortunately, some of the people in the church have a belief that kind of put me specifically in a place that wasn't very beneficial and didn't see me in a very good light. And I started to believe these incorrect notions that some of these people would repeat. And
would you mind me asking what they said?
well, I mean, again, so this is not like anything to do with the church as like any kind of dogma or scripture or gospel or anything.
Yeah.
It's just certain people repeating certain things. So like there was this idea that like if you're not born exclusively in a white body, that somehow your soul in the previous existence did something incorrect, and now you're being punished for not incarnating in a European descent body.
Okay.
And so
Yeah,
it's
it's your
kind of
fault.
weird.
It's your
'cause,
fault.
I mean, I'm mostly Spanish descent, but that's besides the point. And so,
That wouldn't sit well with me either.
what's that?
I said that wouldn't sit well with me if I was you either.
Right. And so I started kind of to believe these things, right? And that kind of was one of the main reasons why I started to fall away from the church, was because like I thought to myself, I'm never going to be perfect. I can't even try to be perfect. Why am I even going to bother?
Yeah.
So I kind of like, whatever. And then I met our mutual friend, Ben. And Ben and I would kind of, I guess, kind of experiment with certain things growing up. And that kind of really opened up my consciousness in a certain way that it made me realize that the reality that we live in is far bigger and more vast than we can even imagine.
I've had some experiences on mushrooms.
What's that?
I've had some experiences on mushrooms that kind of have
Yeah.
opened my eyes like that. But definitely can't tell if that's the drugs or just what I'm experiencing. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that some of these things really do kind of tune your consciousness locally in a certain frequency that kind of like aligns with like different levels of reality. And through those things, then you can perceive things differently than as if you were like in your normal linear, three-dimensional mindset, brain, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? What we only use like a fraction of
10% of our brain,
10% of our
3%, something
brain.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the heck is the rest of it for?
We need the pill.
We need. What was that?
What's that called?
What was that movie? God.
Limitless.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then he like remembers every single thing you've read and saw and blah blah blah.
Oh,
blah,
for
blah.
sure.
That was cool.
That was
what a good
cool.
movie.
So like the theme here is kind of like the power of connection, and so you've had some connections that have kind of led you to where you're at. You've had some connections that definitely have kind of shaped your life up to this point. Do you guys have any stories, before we jump into, Jaime talking about his near-death experience, that might be relevant to kind of that theme?
Connect like a spiritual connection?
Well, so
Or-
there's connection on like the personal level, the societal level, and like the cosmic level.
I would just say something like about the collective consciousness, I think, is rising. I mean, him and I talk about this all the time, how it just seems like there's something in the ether that just people are starting to like wake up to certain things. And so, maybe I'm part of that, and all boats rise in the rising tide. So maybe I'm that little boat rising up a little bit. And he's been teaching me a lot. We watched that one show, Gaia. Gaia's like this, spiritual network. And like every show on there is so incredible, like such good stuff.
Nice.
They do the scientific stuff, for the science nerds. They do the spiritual stuff for like psychedelic stuff, and then they do psychic, people that can like, they're clairvoyant. So, I mean, just getting exposed to all that stuff is just blowing my mind left and right every day.
Nice.
So it's been a crazy 3 or 4 years since I like kind of got into this stuff. Because he remembers I used to be like, that shit ain't real. I don't believe in ghosts or goblins or any of that crap. And now I'm like, dude, tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah.
So you know how I know that consciousness is expanding?
How?
Because you two are here.
Oh,
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are probably, not to say the last people I would think about, but I would have never thought to myself that I'm having a podcast with Steve and about...
Well, I mean,
Attaboy.
honestly, like a little bit, like I have a family that has been going down like the path of like self-development and self-improvement. Like, my mom and dad, they did EST training. I think that developed into landmark education. I, at like 28, went and did the Landmark Forum, which for me, that was like the beginning of me understanding, I've got to take back my connection to my own life. Like up to that point, I had been living in a very robotic fashion. Like, okay, my parents, think that I should be an engineer. Okay, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to date this person because I think that this person is going to make my parents happy. And I was in long-term relationship after long-term relationship, but I really wasn't like, oh man, this is the best life ever. I was actually like getting in trouble. I was finding ways to kind of escape my life. And then when I went to Landmark, they talk about all of the things that, our egos kind of create for ourselves, like stories and, all the baggage that we carry around with us, that we have to clear out first in order for us to then be like, all right, I'm starting off on a new journey. And so at the end of that forum, they say, the universe is empty and meaningless, but it's empty and meaningless that it's empty and meaningless.
What?
Yeah, it's like this circular, I know, it's like to someone that doesn't know the whole program that I went through, to hear that statement, and have my mind blown. So like they kind of help you go through all of these different things of like, what is language? Like humans created language. And so like the fact that we don't communicate telepathically, the image isn't just communicated. It has to be put into words in order for someone to understand what you're talking about.
Vibrations.
And a lot of those words don't even mean absolutely correctly what we want to embody, right? So we went through that and like, okay, I get that, And so at the end of the conference, I was really left empowered with, okay, a human is a meaning-making machine. Like we just create meaning out of anything, even if there's no meaning at all. So what they started in me was that, okay, if the universe has no meaning, and to some people that really identify with like religion and things like that, it was a little bit hard for them to like take this on. But for me, I was, not really in any religion. I was like, no, I don't believe, in anything, in God or whatever. Yeah, I grew up, Christian and Methodist and stuff, but it was just, again, me going with my parents to church.
So were you like agnostic then, or atheist then, or just rebellious? Or?
I knew that there was kind of something. Like I felt this my whole life, that there's just some connection that we all have.
Something
and
special.
So, yeah. And it's like when I would go into a room, I could feel the vibe of different people. And different people could feel my vibe. And so for me, being a lot of the time very self-conscious, I would feel like I'm not good enough, what's wrong with me or whatever. I hope these people like me. But then they wouldn't like me, and I'd be like, well, what the heck? And so I quickly realized that I had to work on myself to get better and like not doubt myself. So that landmark education, story is just, that was the real initial push for me to get into like self-development. And, I did the whole landmark kind of journey, and that was really great. It helped me live my life. Like I broke up with my girlfriend for had a girlfriend for 3 years. I'm like, you're not the one for me. It was news to her. But at in the end, she was like, all right, that was actually, thank you for letting me go. And then I lived with my dad in New Zealand for a year.
That must have been cool.
And that was like the beginning of my life. That was where I was like, I'm taking charge of my life. And this is what I'm going to be about. And so for, the next few years, and when I moved to Arizona after living in New Zealand, I was partying. I was partying pretty hard.
Yeah.
As you remember, Steve. And
I do.
Some with you. And it was fun, but I knew that wasn't going to be what I was about. And so now I have, an awesome wife of 15 years. Hi, Kimmy. I got kids, Jake and Kaylee, who are just tremendous kids. I couldn't be, more inspired every day with the lessons that they teach me about how to be a better human. And so then I'm just like, I want to be a better all-around person. And so I started doing this stuff, and it really led me to, make more connections. And it's like the connection that you had and I had started, and that got me introduced to Jaime, and like it's crazy. And you were talking about it as, what is it called? Synchronicities. Like when you're just in tune with the way that I think that the universe is going, things just fall in line. Like you're greeted with all of these opportunities that you don't even have to do anything, and they're just like, oh, there's a new job for me. I was let go from my previous job, but now this door has opened up, and it's way brighter than anything I could have possibly imagined. So there's a lot of those connections that I feel have just helped me get to where I'm at today. And so I don't know. Maybe you have some stories like that.
I mean, I guess kind of like consciousness in general is definitely expanding because
Yeah.
I feel like I'm able to talk about this subject with more people now than I probably ever have been. And I'm at the point now where I really don't care what people think. It's not about me. Like, I want to spread my message and have them hear the message, whether they care about it or not.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to sit in their mind like planting a seed. Later in life, when something happens, they're going to reference that, you know, maybe something I said and be like, oh, that's what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And at the moment they heard it, they might think like, you know, this guy's crazy, doesn't, you know, whatever. But so.
I think you get older, you start caring less about what people think of you. At least I do. Would you say that's true?
What's that?
Would you say that's true? Like, were you, if like when you were younger, you cared a little bit more about what people thought,
Oh,
so
absolutely,
you were
yeah. I don't
less
feel like that's
likely
true
to
with
have the
everyone, yeah.
conversation? I mean, but as you were saying, like, the opportunities to have these type of conversations are just becoming more and more frequent.
Right.
I definitely feel that. I feel that there is something, you know, on the cusp of happening, or at least some kind of awakening of humanity that, you know, I really want to be a part of. And, you know, I'm glad that you guys are here to help that. Like, I definitely don't have my shit together.
Yeah, Maddie, what the heck?
I know. Like, and like, I'm definitely not trying to talk to people as like, hey, listen to me and do what I do. I hope that you can listen to me and don't do what I do, because I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And you know, if there's one thing that I have learned, that love is really the key. I used to, like, when I was talking about Landmark, like, they have this exercise where you like jump off this little step and you're like announcing, you know, what it is that you're about. Like, you clear away all the things that like you've had and baggage wise, and you're like, I'm gonna jump off, and like you say whatever. When I jumped off, I said, I am love.
Nice.
And they also had an experience of what you want, and I said, I want a girl with a bubble butt.
Nice. Gotta have priorities. You know?
I got what I wanted.
Oh!
Yeah. And it's like, love is so powerful, but in today's society, it's like, oh, you don't want to express it too much because then you're not macho, you're not manly, you know? And so there's this whole image, this whole ego that I've had to wrestle with in terms of like, I want to express the love that I have inside me just for everybody, but I feel like if I do that, then I'm going to be looked down upon, that I'm going to be, you know, criticized, and it affected me. And it really made me try to act differently than how I, you know, am now. I feel, and you know, took me 48 years to learn that. But I care a lot less about what people think of me, and I'm better about it, you know. And when you stop caring, you then open yourself up to make connections with the people who do share those interests. I don't know.
So if you think about it, the most manly men that I know are the most loving men as well. And so I don't think it's necessarily about macho or machismo or any of that nonsense. I feel it's really about expressing who you are as, you know, a participant in this world and part of the God consciousness, and realizing that really, like you said, like the universe is built on love, and expressing that outwardly doesn't make you less of a man. In fact, it makes you more of a man.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
in my mind, I think about all the men I know, and I think about all the best men I know, and they're all loving people.
Yeah. I think I was a little bit lost. Like, I was trying to find out, who am I really? And so I was grasping onto like these ego-centered images of well, what is a man? You know,
What is a woman?
what is a woman?
Just kidding. Well, I like the fact that he was talking to me about consciousness, how, we're all part of this overall big consciousness. We're just little bits and pieces. So when you think of it like that, it's kind of like the Christian way of like, doing to others how you want to be treated kind of thing. So I'm talking to you, but really you're a part of me and I'm a part of you.
Right.
So you could be a woman, I could be a man, blah, 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 blah. So we're all kind of like sexless
Connected.
and this just pure consciousness entity. That's what he's teaching me. So
Yeah.
pretty
we're
cool shit. When you think of
connected.
it that way, you have more empathy with, like if you get pissed off, you're driving your car, you get road rage, you're like, fuck that guy right there. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And then, but that's you and you are him kind of thing. Maybe he had a bad day, and so you just don't know what other people are going through.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of, take a breath and just deal with it, relax. But just think, hey, that could be me on the other side.
For sure.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
love. It's about love.
It is about love. So with that, I mean, do you want to talk about kind of your experience?
Yeah,
Tell us about
definitely,
the orbs.
Tell us about that shit because
So like I
it's
was
fucking
saying
awesome.
earlier, I learned some bad things, and not necessarily from a bad organization or anything, but I did learn some bad things,
Yeah.
and again started to believe these bad things, and I started to internalize them and actually take them on as myself, because of the source it came from. And one night, I don't know how this came about, but like my friend Ben and I decided we wanted to try something, some kind of substance. Can't tell you what it was because I don't know.
Yeah.
And the experience itself was pretty awesome. I mean, I had a good time. Like I can't say I didn't have a good time. But during the middle of this experience, there was something that came up in the apartment next door. Ben and I were in his apartment upstairs, and there was a building right next door, and like the cops showed up, and there was like a fight or something. Something happened. I don't remember. And Ben saw the condition I was in. He's like, you can't come down there. I don't know why he felt compelled to go down there, but whatever. That's Ben. So he put me in his room, kind of sat me on his bed, and Ben, being very ADD in his patterns, as he was walking out of the room, he turned off the light and closed the door behind him. So now I'm like in this dark room, not entirely dark, the windows are open, some sun coming in, but it was like late evening, so, not too much light, but, so I kind of just sat there, kind of in my zone, and I decided to lay down, and I felt my consciousness just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until essentially my heart stopped. And when this happened, my consciousness popped right out of my body. And it's absolutely painless. It's absolutely seamless. It's just like you're here, and then the next frame, you're here. And so what happened was I popped out of my body, and for just a brief moment, I see myself on the bed, and it doesn't even occur to me. It doesn't even like faze me. And I kind of like float through the ceiling. So now I can see like the roof of the building. And as I start to flow higher and higher into the sky, I could see the Superstition Mountains off to the east. I'm like, wow, it's a great, great perspective or vantage point, right? And before I know it, I'm all the way in outer space. And I'm looking at the Earth below me, and it's huge and immense, and I mean, beyond beautiful. And I connected consciously with the Earth. So I could feel the Earth's energy, that consciousness that is the Earth. And it was very loving and very caring, and it had this very kind of like motherly feel to it, like just very nourishing and very caring. And I mean, it's just beautiful. And the funny thing is that when you're in that state, you could see different perspectives at the same time. So I could see from my perspective, and then I could see myself from another perspective. Like, like him looking at me from over there.
Dang.
And so I could see myself and myself looking from that perspective at the same time, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I kind of just sat there floating as an orb, a ball of light in space. And I sat there for maybe what seemed like 30 seconds, long enough to get a really good feel and understanding of what I'm looking at. And in a single instant, I can't even describe how fast this was, but it's in a single instant, I was like, imagine somebody took like a slingshot and then just like, boom, you know, I was just like,
Catapulted
warp
away.
drive, light speed, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
all the way to what I can only describe as the center of the universe. And I knew this because everything went from there. So like every bit of the universe was away from this center. So this was like the center, the source, whatever you want to call it, of consciousness. And when I got there, I saw this massive, huge ball of light, you know, just huge, beyond my comprehension. And even though I could tell it was huge, I was still at a distance away. So I was still looking at it from a distance, but I could see everything in detail. And instantly I knew that what I was looking at was the source of consciousness. Like my consciousness, like the person that makes me, the essence, the energy, the whatever you want to call it, that makes me as a living being, came from this source. And it was infinitely intelligent. It was infinitely loving. I mean, the sheer love and magnitude of being just in the presence was in itself almost kind of like overwhelming. And
I've heard people call it excruciating.
I mean, it wasn't bad,
It's
but
it's so much love that it's like
yeah, I mean, it
overwhelming.
was intense. And what I could see was like there's like all these like hundreds of thousands of little orbs kind of just like floating, you know, kind of just circling. It was part of the source, but it wasn't in the source. It was just kind of like hanging out and you know, rotating around, kind of like a galaxy does, right? You know, you kind of see a galaxy floating around. Think of it like that. And after a few moments, I don't know how long it was, but after a few moments of taking this in and kind of like realizing what I'm seeing, I had a spirit guide show up. Now the spirit guide was also in orb form, so I didn't see the person. I don't remember a name, but I knew that this person was my spirit guide, or at least one of them. And we started to talk, and it was, again, all telepathic. Everything's all telepathic. And he started to explain to me what happened, you know, why I'm here, what this place was, and we started to analyze what we were seeing. And what he wanted to show me was different perspectives of different souls' evolution by just showing me a couple of things. And the first thing he showed me was, he was like, watch this. And there was an orb off in the distance. And instantly I knew which orb to tie into. So like, watch this. So he kind of like links me to that orb. And my understanding was that this orb had just finished their incarnation. So they had just died. They were completely done with their life. And they were going to come back to source and reintegrate. And the instant I connected to that orb, I could sense that it had a very, very long life. Something like that we would consider like 900 years old, right? Like just really long life.
Like Yoda.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I had this impression that this person had a really long, rich, well-experienced, a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. And I mean, it was like a treasure of information from just this one little orb of light. And when the orb reintegrated with source, I got this feeling collectively that the entirety of source celebrated. from just this one person.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Like the entirety of Source collectively celebrated as if it was like a homecoming of homecomings, you know? And it was just one person.
Yeah.
And it was like as if like it got just a little brighter for a moment. And my understanding was that everything that person experienced, everything, every experience, every action, every interaction, every choice, all the knowledge, all the wisdom that it gained was collectively uploaded for Source to enjoy as a whole. And so Source, every single moment of every single day, becomes richer and wiser and more experienced, simply because we exist and choosing to live in this incarnation. And we're just one planet, you know, we're just one little speck of dust in the universe and a whole sea of, you know, who knows.
Yeah.
And so, and again, so because this orb was coming from that direction, not where I came from, I knew instantly that this person was incarnating from a different world, which means what? That this was what we would consider an ET,
Sure.
right? And so by seeing that specific orb come back in and realizing that it was the exact same as all these other orbs coming back to the same source, just like me, that all life throughout the universe is essentially the same spiritually.
We are all connected.
You know, we might
Even
be
connected
different
to the-
consciously and
Yeah.
physically and socially and culturally and technologically and all these different things.
Yeah.
But our soul, our essence comes from that same source.
Yeah.
So no matter what somebody looks like or is from or whatever, it's beyond, that doesn't really matter.
That's powerful.
Dang.
And then he pointed out another soul, another orb of light, but this one was leaving source. And it was kind of going the same direction I came from. So I kind of just I just kind of connected the dots and thought that this person was going to go experience life on Earth. And my understanding when I connected to that orb was that this is the very first time leaving source. It was their very first incarnation, a complete contrast from the other person that came in. So this other person, probably countless lives and really long lifetimes. So it was a complete contrast. It showed me both perspectives from the same place. And so again, this young soul was leaving source, and it was like full of like excitement and like wonderment, and had this like really intensely happy feeling that like, oh, I'm leaving home for the first time. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And it was just like this beautiful experience to watch that. And it was just like, whoa, you know, getting these two contrasts of experienced and inexperienced. And from that level of reality, all souls are equal. So it's not like the one coming back was any, you know, more worthy or more whatever than the one leaving. So it kind of showed me that we're all equal from the highest order. None of this like nonsense that we come up superficially, you know, like, oh, we're real, blah, 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 you know, that's all nonsense.
Or have some like, you know, person to go to for access to the power. Like, you know, we're all connected. We all have the one source inside.
Right.
Yeah, we just need to understand that.
And again, that energy, that source entity, wasn't one singular person. It was a culmination of everyone. So what we think is God isn't one singular person. It's one singular entity with the culmination of anyone and everyone and everything combined.
Yeah.
Dang.
And so after we kind of went through that little bit of him showing me about source and the different levels of consciousness and different experiences and whatever, he wanted to go through a life review with me. So now again, we're floating in space, right? There's all these stars and galaxies in every direction that you can look, and just absolutely beautiful. And so again, we're sitting there floating in space, and out of nowhere, this kind of like screen pops up, kind of like in midair, and
Cosmic
we start-
technology.
yeah, and we start going through my life review. And again, I'm only 17 years old, so
Yeah.
it's like, what kind of life review you're going to have at 17 years old? And so we started to kind of go through like things over the course of my life, and it was just kind of like us, just kind of like doing like spot checks here and there. Like, hey, you know, you were kind of mean to this kid, and you know, maybe you didn't want to say these things to your mom, or you know, you were kind of like not making the right decision at this moment. And what I realized is that there's absolutely no judgment, zero judgment. Judgment comes from yourself. If there's any judgment of any kind, it's from yourself, judging yourself. There's no judgment of any kind from the spirit guide, from source, from anyone. And I even remember feeling bad about like watching these things and being like, nah, you know, it's kind of crappy. Like, you know, like kind of feeling really crappy about these little things he was showing me. And it wasn't, again, to make me feel bad. It was just for perspective.
Yeah.
And so he then shows me a second screen. And the second screen was an alternate timeline that would happen if I chose to not return to my body. So he's like, okay. And he showed me this kind of like, almost kind of like a movie of future events that hadn't happened yet. And one of the things that was most prominent during this was that I saw my mother, and it wasn't necessarily my death that created the series of events, but it was kind of like the snowball. It was like the first part of the snowball, and it created, you know, and as it went further down, it got bigger and bigger. And one thing was that my mom went through this like really deep depression after just losing one of her kids. And it created like a huge rift in her marriage, and it essentially created all these series of events in which she eventually committed suicide.
Jeez.
And as I'm watching this, I could feel the pain from that experience that I haven't even lived. It was like, it's like you were living it, but you weren't. But it wasn't like your life at that moment yet. Just a future event. And so, and then I saw my brother. My brother kind of like spiraled, kind of like his life kind of spiraled out of control. You know, he just lost his brother. His mother committed suicide. He really got into like heavy drugs and alcohol, and essentially just made one mistake after another, and essentially destroyed his entire life.
Oh, geez.
So his life was essentially completely destroyed. And after seeing these three separate things, I just like this isn't something I can accept.
Yeah.
And so after watching this, he showed me a third screen. And this is the screen of my life going forward if I chose to return. Now, the screen was black.
Uh-oh.
Now, in the moment that I was watching it, I could see everything. But from my memory, the screen is completely black. And so, obviously, they're not going to let you remember future events that hadn't happened yet, because then that alters your choices
Sure.
and likely events that other people are going to choose along the way.
Yeah.
Or they could do the Men in Black where they, you know, make you forget the little.
Right. And so, so after kind of going back and forth with my spirit guide and seeing the probability of what would happen if I didn't return, the probability of what would happen if I did return, my spirit guide and I were kind of going back and forth about why I should return. And I remember thinking like I'm only 17 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I just watched this guy with 900 years of experience come back to Source and like celebrate his life and like share his wisdom and experience with everyone.
Yeah.
And here I am at 17 years old with nothing.
Right.
And I thought, like, you know, the analogy I like to use is like, you know, imagine you have to drive or you have to walk, you know, 5 miles in each direction to get a pail of water, right? You're not going to walk all that way and fill it up, you know, a little bit. You're
Right.
going to fill up the whole bucket because then that makes the trip worthwhile.
Right.
And that's kind of how I felt. I felt like I was coming back too soon. I didn't have enough experience to share. And believe me, as much as I wanted to reintegrate and be a part of that, having the realization that if I chose that, this other series of events were likely to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of like not really even a choice. And I remember the spirit guide again, kind of him and I going back and forth. And I remember telling him, now you got to remember, I'm 17 years old, so I brought that 17-year-old mentality with me, right? Not like I brought like, you know, like my past lives experience with me,
Right.
and all that wisdom. I brought my 17-year-old mentality with me. And I told my spirit guide, I haven't even had sex yet. And he was like, hey, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, like he was agreeing with me.
He's like, go out there and get it.
And what I took from that was that as a human being, like that's a very valid experience.
Sure.
You know, that connection and that level of intimacy with other people, like that's a valid human experience. And
Yeah.
it's a human experience that I think we're supposed to encounter. And it was just kind of funny how he instantly agreed with me and like, oh yeah, you're right, yeah, you know, which I've
No judgment.
yeah.
Yep.
So I felt like that was kind of funny.
Nice.
And so after a bit of going back and forth, I decided that I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
And so,
It's totally your choice.
yeah, entirely my choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He probably kind of guided me on the way, you know, probably for good reason. But even though like the whole experience of like getting there was kind of like a process, coming back was instantaneous. So I went from being essentially in the middle of the universe
Yeah.
to back on that bed. And I woke up and I just had this unbelievably overwhelming sense of like, whoa, like, wow. Like God isn't just real.
Yeah.
Like it's immense.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's conscious. It's loving. Like what people think God is like some man on a cloud or some,
Yeah.
you know, whatever is beyond, you know, beyond truth.
Yeah. And he's not wrathful.
No, absolutely
He's
not.
all just pure love.
No, absolutely not.
That's awesome.
And it's not even just so much that God is like infinite knowledge and wisdom and love and everything. It's that I am part of that.
Yeah.
And you are part of that. And everyone is part of that.
Except for Dave. He's not in there.
And so
Just kidding.
I woke up back on the bed, and now the light coming in from the window is much darker. So some time has lapsed. And my body was really cold because it hadn't been pumping any blood the whole time.
Damn.
Dang.
And so it's like, you know, like when your leg wakes up, you kind of feel like that rush of like blood kind of coming through.
Yeah.
That was my whole body
Dang.
for like a few moments. I could literally feel the warmth running through my veins
Whoa.
and like reigniting my body. And it was just like, whoa. The whole experience was incredible. And for probably the next entire month, like I was just in this like sense of kind of like euphoric, this very euphoric sense of like, you know, having just witnessing God in person and seeing what God actually is, and then realizing that every single person outside of me is a reflection of that same being, that same entity, whatever you want to call it. It was just like, oh my God, you're God.
Yeah.
You're God.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Oh
like
my
everyone
Jesus.
everyone is God.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a different perspective of God. every one of us is living a individual perspective that only we can offer, and each one of our perspectives benefits the whole of eternity.
That's awesome.
And
Gives you something to think about, like, you know, if you're ever aloof and kind of trying to find meaning, that's a pretty awesome meaning, like that your experience here through what you learn here goes back and contributes to the whole. That's pretty awesome.
right, yeah. And so from that moment on, I kind of had to look at reality in an entirely different way. I had to, you know, because like you have your like your human front, you know, you have your ego, you know, your conditioning, all these things as a human being that you still have to deal with, and obviously your emotions. But I've always tried to keep that in the back of my mind that everyone that I interact with is part of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of people I don't like. There's a lot of people I do like. And despite all those things and all the negative experiences I had in life and whatever, I still try to look at everybody from that perspective.
Damn, that's
beautiful.
trippy.
That's beautiful.
That's trippy good.
I love it.
That was amazing.
So it's hard. Is it hard to kind of keep that feeling?
Yeah, you ever have anything similar to that experience since?
No, not with that level of intensity. I did have a couple of out-of-body experiences.
What were those like?
After the fact, I've had a lot of, I've had at least a few ET experiences
Ooh.
and a lot of spiritual experiences as well. And kind of believe it or not, they're kind of like almost one and the same. Like a higher dimensional ET might be perceived as like an angel, especially if they're really high consciousness, very, very connected to source. Then from our perspective, our three-dimensional perspective, they would look like an angel. But they could be incarnated in a different dimension, different part of the universe, maybe in a different time.
Wow. So what was one of those instances?
What's that?
What was one of those instances?
Okay, so the first real one happened about 2002. And it took me a really long time to kind of like, not really understand it, but kind of like fully accept it. So I went out really late one night with a couple of friends, and this is a few years before I met Steve, so I had no idea, you know. But I went out one night with like one of my friends, and we came home really late. And it was like 2:30 in the morning on like a Saturday or something, so I pretty much like, as soon as I came, I pretty much crashed on the couch, expected to sleep until like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock or something, right? And so later that morning, at exactly 6:30 in the morning, I was completely, instantly wide awake, like to the point of being fully conscious instantly, which is kind of weird in itself because, like, normally when you wake up, it's kind of like a process, you know, like you might be awake, but usually a process to get up.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I went from dead sleep to being completely 100% wide awake in just a moment. And the funny thing is, when I was laying there and this happened, I somehow knew that somebody initiated this. I didn't know how I knew this, but I just knew this. That somebody was like,
Yeah.
are we got time?
Well, we're getting close. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we want to.
Your story has become tiresome. No, I'm just kidding. That's good.
We have so much good content, and like, you know, your stories. I love hearing about them because it just, like, I don't know what your thoughts are, but like when I hear what you've experienced, it just
He's lucky.
gives me confidence that like there is more to this life. Like there is a reason why I'm going through all of the challenges that I'm doing. Does that kind of resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've heard it been said before that like we choose the experiences that we want to have,
Yeah.
and that because Earth really isn't a fun place, or not always a fun place, or not always the
I've heard that
easiest
we're like
place.
the lowest vibrational
Right, yeah.
frequency
And
of,
so because
of
of that,
realities.
we are these really high conscious, high vibrational beings
Yeah.
that have to lower ourselves just to exist in this reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to learn all of these three-dimensional things like walking and talking and moving stuff. And
The
you know,
Matrix.
if I want to build a house, I have to physically build a house.
Right.
I can't just manifest it with my mind.
And you're wrestling with your ego that is,
Right.
not you, but it makes you think that it's you. And a lot of people identify with those thoughts and egos. That's another challenge for sure.
Right.
What was that thing you guys were talking about where you hear the voice outside of your brain, but it's like, almost like the angel and the devil on your shoulder kind of thing, and you have like an inner dialogue? Who was saying that?
I have an inner dialogue. Oh, my.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I actually talked to Kimmy, and because I think if you don't have an inner dialogue, do you not have thoughts? I think that would be like, because when you think to yourself, that is kind of your inner dialogue. Like that's the voice in your head being like, all right, I got to go to the store. I got to go buy some milk. I think this, colored dress is better than this one. Or, we all have that kind of voice in the head that's just like a running dialogue.
I thought we do, but someone says they don't sometimes.
I've
and I'm like,
heard,
what?
and I looked it up online. Kimmy doesn't think that she does, but I think we've talked about it a little bit more since that conversation, and she does have that. But it's common. Like people don't know that they are not that voice. They identify with that voice so much that they think that that's them.
And that's the ego, or what is
that's
that
the
exactly?
ego.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Man,
I looked it
wild.
up, and there are some people that don't have a running dialogue.
Like 20%, 30%?
It was
or-
like 10%.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And
Are they
don't know-
NPCs? What are they?
I don't know. I don't know. But
Non-player
it's-
characters? Just like
mean-
little robots. Doot, 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 doot.
So I think before we wrap it up, like how does Jaime's story kind of like inspire you, or like what does it help you look at kind of the universe and stuff about like creation?
Well, it inspires me to figure out what kind of drug you were taking. And then, no, just kidding. Gosh, I don't know. That's a heavy question just because his experience was so freaking wild, like with the orbs and the consciousness, and it's all connected. And I was like, wow. But I do feel that we are all connected.
Yeah.
And, I'm still learning this stuff because I'm just new to this. But, yeah, it's just like, thought itself, consciousness itself it's just a wild concept to really think about.
Do you have any ideas about society downplaying these connections?
Yeah, I think there's like a stigma.
Yeah.
Sometimes they, whether it's religious people saying, "Oh no, you have to just pray to God and go to church," that style,
Yeah.
instead of being within and meditating and kind of having more self-awareness of what's going on. Awareness.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Awareness is.
That's a good one.
Yeah, presence.
So I tried to meditate. I need to do it more often. I know you said you were going to start doing more.
Yeah.
And I kind of had like an out-of-body experience when I was meditating, but it was kind of like, I don't know if I was half asleep or half awake kind of deal, but I did feel something. And it was kind of magical, but maybe I was just tired.
Well, I think that's the experience that a lot of people have, is that like even Thomas Campbell that developed all of this kind of scientific exploration into creating and stimulating, through like binaural beats and like, tones that help the different hemispheres of the brain kind of be in sync. That's really what it is. It's like your body's asleep, but your mind is awake. And at that time, like your consciousness is able to be more in tune with like the cosmos, the consciousness. And, we can dive into it a little bit deeper, I think, because there's a lot to be said about how I believe society keeps us unaware that we are all connected, that we do have this fragment of total consciousness of God inside each one of us, because it's the egos that man has to kind of overcome to achieve like the higher state of consciousness. But there's so many people in this world that don't even know that that is out there, that exists, you know, that haven't had a near-death experience, or, you know, that hasn't even taken any step into like, what's really going on? And if you're so locked in with that, the ego loves to be powerful. And so, you know, you have all these rulers and, you know, people that like to make sure that you don't feel powerful, because then you need to go through them to get power.
Or you need to go to church.
You go to church.
Power, yeah.
Well, that's right. Like you need to go to them, cardinals and, you know, the religious figure to talk to God. But you are God.
Yeah, religion wants you to believe that God is a separate entity outside of you.
Yeah.
They don't want you to know that you are God, and that as a part of God, like, you know, that you are connected to God essentially for eternity.
Yeah.
Source, force, the force awakens.
And I feel like in a way, like religion acts as like an artificial gatekeeper to something they have no right to gatekeep.
Right.
That would be like me saying, hey, the sun exists outside, and you got to come through me to see the sun.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the reality is the sun already exists.
Do you think it started good? I think it started with good intentions. Like, I don't know if Jesus actually existed, but I think that he probably did. You know, the things that were recorded from his life are pretty amazing. But the scriptures were all like written after his life. And so the things that he taught, and I have conversations with my dad about this because he's, you know, reading some books about, you know, what the actual like Sanskrit was. And again, this is information that's gotten lost from different translations because the words don't necessarily embody what actually was trying to be said. And so, you know, it talks about how Jesus was like, do as I do. And it's basically, I am God and you are God. And, you know, to identify that we are all God a little bit. And it's challenging for a lot of people because they can't see beyond their physical body. Like,
right. So a point about Jesus, a lot of Christians think that like the second coming, it's going to be like Jesus literally coming through the clouds and save everybody.
It's not?
No, absolutely not. No, what I think is going to happen is this. What I think is that Jesus isn't going to come down to the third dimension.
Yeah.
He already did that.
Yeah.
He already did that.
Yes.
What's going to happen is that we collectively as an entire planet is going to raise our consciousness so that we meet him.
I like that.
He's not coming down. We are going up.
So he's not going to come down to the Super Bowl, the halftime show right in the middle of the 50-yard line?
Have you heard that like there's a choice to be made, like, I don't know, sometime in the future where it's like you choose either love and a higher state of consciousness, or you choose kind of like wallowing in the mud with like all of, you know, the people that aren't awake, and eventually you won't even be able to experience.
Yeah, so there's going to be two main timelines that are going to play out.
Yeah.
The one main timeline is, like you said, one where we have the realization of unity consciousness, where we accept love, we accept each other, and that timeline doesn't end.
Yeah.
The other timeline is finite, meaning that it's eventually going to extinguish itself out.
Yeah.
So, people are going to make the choice. Are they going to be, you know, being part of the unity consciousness, or are they going to be in belief that we're all separated?
Yeah.
And the ones that believe in separation are going to have a really hard time.
Yeah.
And they're going to go down that timeline in which it's going to essentially extinguish itself out.
Yeah, I mean, in the book, it's like talks about entropy, which is kind of like the measurement of chaos, and like, or like the measurement of, the ability to do action. I could be getting it wrong, but he's like, our consciousness, the goal is to lower our entropy, and the way to do that is through loving kindness and, higher states of, the higher frequency is love. And so if a civilization isn't able to raise their consciousness, God, doesn't want to waste any more time or energy on a civilization that's going down the wrong path. He already knows, okay, that is not going to be a fruitful end result. And so he's able to just be like, all right, let's wrap it up. Whereas the love and further evolution of consciousness is kind of what that being God is all about, is like helping raise the consciousness across the entire universe or multi-universes, all for just the greater good. And that's the mission. That's
so this is the point
goal.
that I wanted to make. By what we're doing and expanding consciousness, talking about this, and opening up other people's awareness of this, and also choosing to be love over fear and hate and whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We're not just changing the Earth. We're changing literally the entire universe.
That's
and
awesome.
what that means is other planets that don't have it as bad as we do, they're going to watch us and they're going to be like, hey, if they can do it,
We can do it.
we can definitely
Yeah,
do it.
for sure.
So we're essentially showing the universe.
Well,
And maybe
let's
maybe
fucking
that's
show
going
'em.
on all over the place too. Maybe it's us. It's thousands of other
Thousands of
entities
others.
all over. They're all
Think
doing
about-
the same
think about
thing.
this as well. Think about this as well. I mean, because we're in a very unique position, especially at this point in time, people are going to look up to us in a way that we can't imagine.
Right,
And I'm not saying do this for that notoriety,
right, because that's
but
egotistical.
imagine seeing us from an outside perspective and seeing all the division, all the hate, all the fear, and still rising.
Well,
still
good-
remembering who we are.
Good
that's
point.
that's why
Good
I
point.
created this podcast. I knew I wanted to be part of, or at least contribute anything that I could to help us as a species combat the fear, the hate, the anger. I mean, I see it in the news all the time. And it is inherent to me as well. I'm driving down the street, I get angry, someone cuts me off. I have to remind myself to be present and operate out of that love and stuff. So it is a journey. It's going to be a journey for all of us. But I'm hoping that you, me, Steve, and the other people that we bring on can really help our listeners just kind of try on it for themselves. Maybe take a meditation practice or something like that. I guess
I think so.
we could wrap it up with maybe a call to action. Would that be cool?
Call to action.
Call to action.
Meditate more.
Meditate more.
Love more.
So if you guys, who are listening, who are watching, if you want to let us know, what your biggest takeaway is from this conversation, and maybe you out there connect with somebody in a way that hey, I wasn't going to reach out to this old friend that I had lost touch with, but maybe maybe do it for yourself. Don't do it for any of us, because it's not going to benefit us. It's only going to benefit you. Actually, it will benefit us because
We're all connected.
we're all connected.
That's right.
So do it for us.
Do it for your
Do
country.
it for you. Do it for your country. Yeah. Do it for
Ask not. I'm just messing.
I always like to think of it like this. I want to be the person that I want to see in other people.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be perfect, but that's how I try to live, just the most basic parts of my life. I want to see myself and other people.
Yeah.
And so by putting myself out there and doing that for other people, then in a way,
Yeah. Well, I think even more than that, it's like you got to be the leader in your own life, like in your own reality. Because I was sitting back, just be like, kind of resigned, like it's never going to change. This is just a crummy, reality that I'm in. I'm going to be a better person for myself. But I never really took it on as like a mission for me until recently to go out and like share my journey, and my exploration into this realm of consciousness. It's a never-ending journey. So I'm super excited to like have more conversations about kind of consciousness, and I mean that's why I created this thing. So.
No, I think it's good, Matty Boy. And I think there's a lot of people just like you, just starting to wake up and like learn about this stuff. I mean, he's been teaching me a lot. You're teaching me a lot. We can all learn together. And yeah, I mean, there's tons of podcasts out there that are just fantastic. Bashar, we've been watching Bashar, and that's kind of like over my head, batshit crazy, I thought at first. But now I'm thinking, oh shit, maybe there's something to this guy. I don't know. I mean, the jury's out, but let's see what happens. But no, I think it's good, Matty.
Nice.
Call to action. Yeah, just, I think, treat people super nice, how you want to be treated, just the cardinal rule.
Yeah.
And just think that person over there is a piece of you, and not just people, but animals, trees, nature, oceans. I mean, it's all good, man. So exercise, get good sleep, treat
right.
people good.
You have to take care of your body.
Take care of your body.
Your body's a temple.
Yeah, totally, man.
All those cliches. Expressions.
Exactly.
All right. So I want to end it on a quote from Rumi. The universe is not outside of you. Look inside yourself. Everything that you want, you already are. So with that, guys, look forward to our next podcast on, what do we got going on here? Let's see, what am I? So I've got a couple ideas. So actually, if you guys want to chime in and let me know what you guys think would be a good next episode, I've got a few ideas. So expanding consciousness through meditation and journaling. Like that's, for me, one practice that has really helped me get the consistency I need so I can remind myself throughout the day, hey, I'm not these angry thoughts or, so anyway, that's cool. And then what if we're not alone? I kind of think aliens, to me, might be a fun conversation.
Yes.
Because there's just so much like to talk
We could go
about.
like years just talking about aliens.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
I still haven't told you my story yet. I can't wait to tell you.
Oh!
Yes.
It's a little quirky,
so maybe
but...
we'll do that. Okay. So the next one we'll do is what if we're not alone? And I think the answer is no. No. I mean, what am I saying?
I think the
answer is yes.
now.
What? Okay.
What?
Now I'm getting confused. We are not alone. That's what I think. So anyway.
Damn.
Oh,
Good stuff, Mattaboy.
I love
Attaboy,
this.
Mattaboy.
This is great.
It was cool.
Anyway, I hope you guys had a good time listening. And
Like, share, subscribe.
Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff.
Throw 'em
I don't
some
know.
money.
This is new for me, but all right.
Do a PayPal or no.
We're going to put this all behind the paywall.
Paywall. No, I don't know.
Make me rich.
Make America great again.
No, that is ego. But anyway, I think we're done.
That was good. Good job, guys. Thank you so
Cool.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cut.